In life, we're trying to make a life worth living and a retirement worth having. We always talk about this in my audio cast because I want to remind people how precious time is, how important relationships are, and how valuable it is to have a few moments of peace and quiet unto ourselves so that we can always put into perspective what's really important in life. And sometimes those quiet moments are just really important to us as well as our house of God and whatever faith we believe in. The reality is that when my life went to nuts, I literally learned something new from a woman that taught me a faith fob. That faith fob has produced for me an incredible ability that the military has continued to test. It's been a fun game, but usually there's a tell sign amongst those people, and I had a lovely conversation with a very caring woman named Karen today, who was probably in her 70s, but she kept dropping hints, and it was sort of comical after a while. The challenge of brilliance is that you don't always get the chance to let people know that you know who they are, you know what they're about, but you really are thankful for the game because it gives you something to talk about, it gives you something to look forward to during the week, and it certainly gives you a little money in the pocket in order for you to produce a life worth living and retirement worth having. In life, I can talk to you about siblings, but the sibling rivalry in my family is out of control, so I prefer not to talk about them at all. Each one of my siblings that are older has done something to literally destroy my life. I have an eldest sibling who decided to medicate me without my permission, and that caused a problem. I have a brother who decided to litigate my name with information that was not literally his to put into place in his own particular state. I have another sister who literally stole all the medical information and then called providers of a transitional period of my life when my father was literally dying and infiltrate that with her own opinions and her friends' opinions, who really had no right to say a word to these people about my life. And then there's my next oldest kin, who literally long ago made some joking comment about putting me in jail, and I believe it's been her game that they've been attempting to do. So that's sibling rivalry for you in a nutshell. But let's talk about other people. Even though a loving woman who at one time showed me this incredible faith fob taught me something basic that I have literally mastered and literally blow people's socks off with in terms of my abilities, they just don't know what to think. They're so busy playing game with all these particular men that they just don't know that God is going to put them in a place that they're not going to like. They have children that were supposed to be impacted by my life force, and their failure was to recognize that the Lord was taking away a monster in a life to bring into their life a loving man who would have schooled, reared, and changed the life forces of the children that she bore with a monster. The reality is, if I tell that story, I sound like an ass, and that's okay. Most people don't think God swears, but I can tell you, angels swear like sailors because the language of the world comes from God. Even the most horrific and bombastic kind of language comes from the Lord, and truthfully, it has a historic lineage that most Americans have completely forgotten, the Latin base or the Gaelic base of which most of our swear words and cuss words come from. But in order to be a pastor who brings in people who are sick of God and sick of holy roller people and how they judge people in 3 seconds or less, I guess the greatest lesson I've learned is how much God knows about the world. I've been beyond fascinated by the fact that in every bag that someone has cut of my life's purchase with God's help to find it actually fits perfectly into another bag that I already owned from long ago. It's been absolutely phenomenal that every single stitch of clothing that I own that is actually a good fit to me, that I don't even bother trying on, is because God led me directly to it. But that's the value of a faith fob when you have put your faith in whatever you believe a higher power is or a divine architect is. When people dabble in faith, like a lot of pastors do, they're these GQ men who wanted to go into ministry because maybe they need a better gig or maybe they want to meet more people or somehow they're moved. But what's fascinating is how they play in places that Jesus would never go. Jesus does not like that there are people in the law in their houses. Now think about that. We have a history of understanding that the Lord was utterly killed by police forces and people who considered themselves lawmen in days of old, and yet we have churches that literally sticker their windows with, "We are protected by the local city people." So what? That is not how God lives his life. You see, God lives a life that's amazing. The Mother and Father in heaven, which most people don't regard, and the Jesus Lord that they all praise, are literally looking down going, "What are you doing, my child? What gives you the right to lord over another human being with any piece of litigation abuse whatsoever? What gives you the right to carry some sort of a weapon to harm another human life?" And we've seen a lot of horrible things in the news since the immigration uprising and the people getting upset about that, who literally want to know what we're going to do about all these people here illegally. Well, part of the problem was that the policies did not shift and change as America shifted and changes. And in truth, it should be family-based. So when my life partner came from a foreign land and it was very difficult to bring her here, we had to follow all the letters of the law to keep her here. The reality is she would have stayed on, and if she had stayed another year, she would have been here for the rest of her life, especially with how people just want to open the door like it's a floodgate. The challenge is that people who come here illegally are going to continue to do illegal things. I've seen that time and time again with the people who slip in front of me and mention that they're not supposed to be here. I struggle in my soul as to whether I'm supposed to report that or whether I'm just supposed to let it go and say live and let live. But in truth, we don't know those people that well, and for all I know, they could be playing a game to try and get some sympathy or a better job or a free ride, and that usually what was the case of a man who lives near one of my siblings. He's always trying to get something for free and for nothing, and I find that odd. But in life, we have moments of time to make a difference for someone. So when we make a difference for someone, we really make a difference for them. I was told by a pastor that he just didn't know what he could do for me. Actually, 2 or 3 weeks have gone by, I think, since I met him, in which I told him some simple priorities. That I was looking for one place to be sheltered, and I was looking for a little food, and I was looking for some employment situation. He represents a church of maybe 6,000 people, I'm guessing, and that could be an oversight, but the reality is he thought I was asking for money. I wasn't. And yet, there are other churches that have 100 people that just simply say to everybody, we'd like to collect $1 for everyone. And they do that, and then they give $100, if you will, to someone in need. Isn't that interesting? That there's some people who know how to do the marketing math of a human being's problem and how to fix it, and there are others that simply decide that they are the Lord of everyone else's intimate resources, their discretionary dollars, or their mind's eye that says that because I'm a pastor in this church, I'm going to decide what book my parishioners are going to read and whether or not we'll allow one in our library or not, and we're going to make sure we get a free copy in advance to check it over and all this sort of stuff. And I think, wow, God is in everything that everyone produces that celebrates him, and yet we have people who think that they're going to decide for hundreds of people whether or not a person has the kindness in their soul, the beauty of their heart, and the movement of the Spirit of the Lord, however you choose to, as I always say, name God in heaven, that openly they're going to decide whether or not God has moved them to assist in even the most humblest of ways. What's been sort of fascinating is this one recent experience I've had in a very loving little church that literally gave me a little canned food, and then they sort of made me into a little project, and then I was gifted a little computer, which sort of works, and that's okay. It's helped me to get online. But it's because a men's group listened to my challenge, and one man out of the 12 to 16 disciples in that group said, I can fix that one problem for you. I have no problem gifting you this computer. I was beyond humbled and blown away. It was not a cheap computer. When I did a little research to just try and figure out if I could make enough money to pay him back, how much am I going to owe him, and he insisted that it was a gift, and he was not asking for it back, which was also sort of impressive. It wasn't just a loan. You see, it's amazing how the Lord can move the soul of someone, and what's also amazing is he was a military man, so he was quick to talk about angels, because I'm pretty sure someone told him who I was, because they violated federal law and got onto my emails while I was working in a free Wi-Fi situation, but that happens all the time. I literally have been locked out of my lifelong language program that I did in the community for a long time, and that actual phone number by local law enforcement. And I'm pretty much, it's the truth, because I was on it 1 minute, the next minute I wasn't, and lo and behold, what drove by? A police car. So you see, I don't have to like them because the journalist in me simply just goes on observation. But I don't have to say that I like them either. I had one officer try to say, you're putting me into the category with everyone else. Absolutely. You took my car. You took my house. You took my girl. You screwed me over. Of course, I'm not going to like you. It doesn't really matter whether or not you're a good guy or a bad guy. The truth is you chose a position to be in a power of authority, and you carry a gun, and you always insult me, but presuming that I've got one. I wouldn't bother to carry one. First of all, I'm a martial artist, so I don't believe in guns usually. And second of all, I believe they are something that are only to protect our food and our land, not to be utilized to harm, kill, or destroy anyone. And that's the difference between a man of peace and a man of God and a man of the law. Now in life we have moments of time to make a difference, we have moments of time to feel things, we have moments of time to do things for other people, and I'm always amazed how some of the most amazing men come from the most humblest of backgrounds. The fascinating thing is I continue to write my PowerPoint about how close people are to the poverty line in terms of 2 or 3 paychecks being away from the loss of a job or the loss of a home if they don't keep it going, is that people don't always want to see themselves in those positions. I literally have had grocery stores trespass a man, and I've heard this because he simply wanted to go in with his bags, buy one meal at a time as he could afford it, and they just thought it was too much for them to honor his money. Isn't that a shame? That a man who is of the meekest of means goes in and honors a grocery store with his hard-earned dollars, however he was able to earn them, and ultimately a grocery store says, sorry, you don't buy enough to shop here. Isn't that an insult to God? You see, there's thousands of verses in the Bible that talk about, and the Quran, that talk about how we're supposed to take care of the elderly, we're supposed to honor the poor, we're supposed to take care of the feeble-minded, but we have to be careful about that because sometimes the Lord gifts people things that they don't recognize as a gift and that other people, men of science, want to call something like an illness. In life, we have moments of time to recognize that we are not the power in the universe. What I love about the old-time movies of the Force or even silly kids films that are of Asian lore and talking about energy fields and stuff is that if you've never seen the energy, it's totally visible. And the reality is, all you need is a fob to be able to see it working and to be able to see that it's, and know that the Holy Spirit is around us at all times. It's sort of amazing and beautiful thing. And I always say to the one person that I love most out of all the people in the universe that I've ever met, that she is missing out on the magic of the Lord. The magic of God is what allowed Jesus to turn water into wine in the ages-old stories that we hear about all the time by not only pastors but also in Bible schools. The reality is that the magic of the Lord still exists today, even in the animals and the plants and all that sort of stuff. But you'd have to be in my life to know what that's like. The reality is that I have produced all kinds of things with the help of God and many lessons of hardship as well, so that I would understand the difficulties that people in my health condition sometimes experience, which I never experienced because I was providing for them foreign language lessons that provided for me a modest enough income and lots of free time. I also marketed a lot of people that gave me extra cash, but that's not important. What's important is whether or not we regard all human life, like Kamala Harris talks about or Marianne Williamson talks about, or whether we just think that certain people get special techniques and special privileges and other people get litigated to death. In life, we have moments of time to show who we are in God's house, and your position and what you do may have nothing to do with how God sees the world. You have to keep your opinions in check by facing in the old-time ministry concepts that there is a greed, there is a gossip, there is all sorts of illness in the land that ruins people's lives. In life, we have moments of time to show who we are in the house of the Lord, and can you believe it? The woman who showed me a faith vow, which is called an old-time pendulum, where they douse to find water, etc. I can find just about anything on the planet, but the truth is, she is so immature that she's never actually seen my gift. She's never received a reading, and openly, even the pizza guy said I blew his socks off. So, we'll have to decide who has God in him. The guys who run around with guns are the ones who walk in the humblest of circles in life. Now, this has been Blake Benson of Magic and Mayhem talking about the magic of God in an audiocast file program, looking for sponsors for a vehicle and other aspects of life that have been stolen from me by people who lie, cheat, and steal other people out of the life that they deserve, the love they should have, and the relationships that God places on their path. Thanks for listening.